One thing that I've learned over the years is that fall fish is totally different on ponds than spring and summer does. So by the time we make it to the fall, a lot of ponds are drawn down, they're pretty low, they're getting kind of scummy, a lot of weed growth and stuff is just nasty. If the lake has, minnows and bluegill, baby bass, crappie, anything, there's a lot of the young of the year at this time. Fish that were spawned maybe in anywhere from March to May, they start out, tiny, and by the time the fall rolls around, there's so much tiny bluegills that are just a couple inches long, heck, even bass and stuff, and guess what? The bass, by this time of year, they're eating a lot of really small stuff. So with the conditions of the lake changing, plus what the bass are actually eating changing, in the fall, you have to totally change it up from the rest of the year. Good news though, they're starting to chase in the fall. Instead of having to slowly drag stuff, hot sunny days where the fish are out deep, the fall they're chasing. So it's a fun time to fish. I'll run you through my 3 go-to baits. Good news too, you don't need specialty gear. Spinning rods will work fine, 8 to 10 pound test on that. Any medium or medium light rod is great. If you like bait casters, you can throw them on those as well, or spin casting. I typically use 10 to 12 pound test, but again, a medium rod, most anything will do. These 3 get bit. Starting off with bait number 1, this is a fun one to fish. It's lipless crankbaits, but I use small 1/4 ounce ones. This is like a 1/2 ounce, a traditional size lipless crankbait. This happens to be a war pig, and I'll have links to all these baits down in the description. But instead of using that bigger size, this is a Berkeley Jack. This is the smaller size here. Or, like this is a War Pig Junior, which is a 1/4 ounce. I like the smaller stuff. Instead of that great big one, to match the hatch, I go with these smaller lipless. The neat thing about these, one, they're really loud. You hear that sound there? They're going to draw fish in from a long ways away. Fish are actually chasing down minnows. When they're aggressive, these things cast a mile. You can work them quickly, and they get active fish to bite. And the thing is, they're always kind of looking for a minnow meal this time of year. This looks like a small bluegill or something as well. Those little 1-inch bluegill, heck, even a baby bass that they'll eat. So lipless crankbaits, I can whip them, and the wind starts blowing a lot in the fall, so I can work these quickly. If I find an area where they're biting or there's some deep water nearby, say like the dam of a pond or something, I might sit and throw these just repeatedly. If there's a lot of bait in the area, you might be able to catch them just in one spot. A lot of times though, this helps me when I first get to a pond. I can cover a lot of water with it. If it's a small city park or just a farm pond or something, a lot of times they're an acre or less. It's not that far to walk around them. I'll just cast this thing out about as far as I can, reel it in pretty quickly, and just start seeing if there's active fish. You'll figure out if the fish are near shore, if they're way out in the middle. You can kind of get a feel for that. And you might walk half the pond, not get a single bite on, say, like deeper water. All of a sudden you get to where it's shallower or there's a little grass or something. You start getting bit. So you can quickly run around the pond, find the area where they're biting, so it helps you find the fish as well. Now, in terms of color, it's pretty simple. Anytime you're in shallow water and you look around, all the baitfish and minnows, they're silverish or white. So like the chrome blackback, chrome blueback's always good, especially on sunny, bright days, just that flashy. If you have a really clear pond, more of this translucent, I can actually see through this thing here, the kind of ghost colors and stuff. Those can be great in really clear water, especially if it's bright. And then if it's more dingy water, or if it's, rainy, overcast day, then more of a white works well. You don't get as much flash, but it'll show up a little bit better. You don't need anything really complicated. Even ones eating bluegill and stuff, there's like no bass that's going to pass up a baitfish or a minnow in the shallows. Bass don't really care. They don't care if it's a shad or a minnow or a bluegill, whatever. If it looks like food, it's up there. Color's not that important. Now, you notice one thing about these baits, when you reel them steadily, it's kind of a shake, a tight wiggle, and you hear the ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. It's rhythmic and stuff. When you stop it or snap it, you'll hear a sudden. It's more of a thud and a high pitch too, but you'll hear like it'll go silent, get really loud when you jerk it or snap it, and then it's going to get silent again. So that's kind of stop and go. So I like to mix in a retrieve here. Now, this isn't the exact bait, but the way I like to retrieve it, you can just cast and wind. That'll catch some. And I typically, you don't want your bait getting super deep. So instead of pointing my rod tip straight down, I'm going to keep it high. So at, say, like a 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock or something, the shallower you want it to run, the higher you keep your rod tip. But basically kind of keep it up high like that. And then I like that stop and go. It changes the sound. It changes the speed of it. So I'll reel it and then just give it a pull up and let it fall just for a second. And these things fall really fast. So you're talking a foot or two per second. So a lot of ponds are pretty shallow, like 10's pretty deep. So I'm giving it just like a short pause, 2 seconds at most, typically just like 1 second. So I'll reel it, give a little pause, let it go down, and then reel it, stop and go. The other thing I like to do is just to pull to the side. For whatever reason, that's always worked for me, just like a pull just to the side. So it's almost like a reverse baseball bat swing. So instead of swinging forward, you're pulling back to the side, but just hold the rod almost flat, reel it, pull to the side. Not only pull the rod tip, say like a foot or two, so it's a momentary, but it's kind of and then it stops vibrating. Instead of going wide like that, it just kind of pulls forward, goes down a little bit, and then starts shaking and rattling again. So that stop and go, that's kind of my go-to on it. Always varying it up, not that continuous retrieve, a little bit of stop and go. Don't let it fall far, and don't sit in any one spot too long when you're not catching fish. If you're not catching, it's great at attracting fish, finding active ones. So if you're not getting bit, keep moving with it. Now moving to bait number 2, that lipless crankbait, it's great because you can move it pretty quickly. It makes a lot of noise. For aggressive fish, it kind of calls them in. And if the water's fairly clear and they're aggressive, if they get to study it too long, sometimes they won't bite it. So that you can trigger a reaction strike with that stop and go. Sometimes the fish, though, are more lethargic, they're not chasing as much, and you need to keep it in front of them and look more natural. That's where these swim baits, these Paddletail swim baits, come into play, and I can work these really slowly. They look really natural, and these are probably day in, day out my favorite to fish. I can chunk these a long ways just like the lipless crankbait, but I can just keep it in front of the fish a lot longer, and if they get pressured, I might have found them with that lipless crankbait, but when they stop biting that, these keep working. Now, you can use a variety of sizes, and I've got them anywhere from 3.8, they'll call them, down to the 2-inch size, like these tiny ones. And basically, it's a boot tail swimmer, and you can see the action tail on it. You put it on a jig head. This is the 3.8, the 3.3. To give you an idea, here's the 2.8 right here, and then this little 2, which is a micro one. Now, for ponds and stuff, if I'm throwing a bait caster, the 3.3 is usually my go-to on a spinning rod, and this is really my favorite, is a 2.8. This looks like the size of a little minnow. Now, if they're really fussy and stuff, if it's starting to get cold out and they're not biting, this little 2 works great on a micro jig head. But this 2.8, this is the size of like every little minnow you see around the shore. This thing just gets bit, and you can fish it so slowly in that tail. You can see how it just wobbles when I'm holding it here. Jiggle your hand just a little bit. Looks so natural. On a bait caster, that 3.3 works well. And this is what, when my son was younger, if you have kids or if you're new to fishing, these are pretty foolproof. It's hard to work them wrong. You know, that lipless I was talking about, stop and go, that has a lot to do with it. On these, just a steady retrieve, a super slow one, they'll stay high in the water column instead of getting down on the bottom and getting all gunky and snagging up. These will stay near the surface, and there's an open hook. They're so easy to catch fish. I mean, if I had to pick one bait, this is it. So let me show you how to rig it and where to throw it. Now, you see I have a variety of jig heads. You want to match those to the size. So this big 3.8, if you're going to throw that and you had heavier bait casting gear, you can get by with a 1/4 ounce or a 3/8 ounce here. The thing is, the heavier the head, the deeper it's going to go, the faster you're going to have to reel it. And then, say like this little 2-inch, I'm going to need a really small hook and like a 1/16 ounce. So that's going to take almost like crappie type gear, or like a micro spinning rod. The ones I normally go with, the 2.8, I like a 1/0 hook on this, a size 1/0, and then an 1/8 ounce jig head. You can still, it seems light, but you can whip it if you have like 8-pound test. You can whip this on a spinning rod still. And the 3.3, if I'm using, say, 3/16 on this, that's going to keep it up high, and I can throw it a long ways as well. And then to give you an idea, so this is like a 3/8 ounce head here. Here's the 1/16. You can see how much they vary. You can see how the hook gets a lot bigger or a lot smaller. So basically, you match it up. There's a slot in the back of these, and you basically want the hook to go about 40% of the way back in the bait. You don't want to go in past 50. It cuts down because the whole tail swings back and forth. So you get past about 40%. So if it's about a third to 40% of the way, you're good. If it goes too far, like I said, it won't swim right. If you have it too short, then it's not really going to stay on very well. So about a third to 40% back of the body length is about perfect. Rigging these are really easy. Just take the jig head, you stick it in the very center of the nose, come straight through the body, and then straight out the top, and then slide it up. And the big key is you want it to be nice and straight on here. You don't want it kinked, up or down, or where it kind of bunches up where your bait kind of looks like this or goofy like that. You want it laying straight on there like you can see. You tie onto the top, and then a hook. Like I said, this is about a third of the way back on the bait here where the hook point is. So that's about perfect here. This happens to be like a 3/16 ounce on the 3.3. I'd throw this on a bait caster. And then working it, really easy. Throw it out, rod tip high, slow retrieve. You can give a little pop or something every once in a while. But the main thing is I don't want this thing going super deep. I want it to stay within like a foot or so of the surface. So, they're typically feeding up towards minnows. You can slow roll it around the pond dam and stuff in the deeper sections, but keeping it kind of above the fish, but just slowly retrieving it. That's why you want a light jig head in that super slow retrieve. The tail is going to be really rhythmic, and you'll be amazed how slowly you can turn these, and they'll still keep coming, and the tails keep going. So slow is the key on this. Put it right by anywhere you think there's fish. What I like to do on these is I'll look for minnows and baitfish. If I see them flicking, out in the middle, if there's kind of viney weed or something, or lily pads or something up shallow, just by the shoreline, I see a lot of minnows flicking on the surface. That tells me where the bait is, and you can almost guarantee in a pond where the baitfish are, the bass is going to be right there with them. So look, keep your eyes peeled for where the bait is. Throw towards that. You can catch them sometimes out in the dead center of the pond. Those fish, they're not on the bottom. They're up chasing near the surface. And almost all the time up towards the shore, fish are going to be roaming looking for those minnows. The minnows like to get around anything in the super shallows. They stay protected by kind of pushing into that gunky stuff where the bass really can't go. If there's fallen down trees or just any sort of weeds and stuff and vines, they can get in there and protect themselves from the bass. The bass kind of lurk along the edges of them. So you do the same thing with your bait. You just throw it wherever there's that cover, come along the sides of it. But sometimes they group up in little schools, the minnows will, out on the surface, out in the middle of the lake as well. So you can try these casting towards the middle and then parallel to the bank. Like I said, the big key, just slow roll it. And then finally on colors on these, I have a couple bright ones. I thought they might show up on camera a little bit better. I love these for smallmouth, but for pond fish and stuff, unless it's really muddy or overcast day, I typically don't go that way. White with some sort of a natural back, black or blue, something like that. They work great if it's a little bit more overcast or more stained. If it's really clear water, natural like this, where it's kind of, again, translucent, you can see through it. Some sparkles in there, like silver flake and stuff that looks like just a natural minnow. Basically, look at a color. If it looks like a minnow to you, probably looks like a minnow to a bass. And then the last bait, I use this one when the bite's tough, or if there's a lot of cover. Those other two baits, they have open hooks. They catch fish well. You don't really have to set the hook. They'll just set themselves. The problem is if your pond has a lot of lily pads, vines and stuff growing, if there's lay down trees, a couple boat docks and stuff, if there's cover and a lot of times the fish will be around it, you can snag on those other ones. This bait will go in there, and then if it's slower, those ones, they're going to snag up if they get on the bottom. This one lets me either go slow and get on the bottom if they're not chasing, or put it into cover. And it's a Fluke style bait. I like the Berkeley jerk shad. This one has no salt in it, so it falls like super duper slow. And when you're on a pond, so many of the fish are way shallow. I use this lake fish, and this is literally one of my go-to lures all the time, but it works fantastically on ponds. Basically, I can put this one, I can let it, and I'll show you how to rig it. I can let it go right into the heart of a lay-down tree, right into a patch of lily pads or something, and bring it out without it snagging. That's where big bass live a lot of times. Plus, it falls two things that trigger bass. One, super slow, so if they're kind of finicky and you're on some urban lake that's been getting a lot of pressure, like everybody's been fishing it, pounding it all weekend, that's slow fall, plus it's erratic. It doesn't just straight fall when it goes down. This thing all of a sudden starts to whoop. It'll just move and looks really natural where it's barely moving, slowly fall, and kind of turn to the side. So it's erratic. It never does the same thing twice. I can twitch it, I can work it fast, and then I can work it super slow. This convinces the really tough to bite fish to eat it. Now, if you want a lot of details on this is a great go-to. I'll put a link in the description of a full video breakdown. I'd spent like 20-30 minutes showing how to fish these exactly, go to a deep dive, so I'll kind of quick hit it here. But I'm going to use a 4-aught, a 3-aught or 4-aught, basically extra wide gap hook, come through the nose, and you rig it what's called exposed, excuse me. You come through the top, and this has little slots on the top where it keeps the hook point in the top there. You see how it's straight on here, and then the hook point is actually buried in these little slits at the top. So I can throw this thing right into the middle, like I said, of a lay down, falling down trees and stuff, and it's not going to get snagged. But when a fish hits it, the hook point's barely in there. You can yank it, set the hook, pull them out of there. So I can put it right in the heart of cover. There's not much weight on this, just a hook, that 4-aught hook, plus the weight of the bait itself with no salt in it, so it's super slow falling. You can work this a variety of ways. If you twitch your rod on slack line, pop, pop, or pop, 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 or just real fast, you can make it where it kicks out side to side, or small little movements, or just scurries. So you can give it erratic action where it's like a darting minnow, something chasing away, but then when it stops, it's going to go erratic and then just going to slowly fall and drift. Big fish, when they've seen so many lures, ones that are just wary or they're not really eating, when that thing is just falling in front of them, it's such an easy meal right in front of their nose, especially when there's like that lay down log or the only dock in the lake or something where you know big ones are living. Well, you just put it right in front of them and you can make them bite it. And the last thing I like about this, you could argue that a topwater, that could make the list of the 3 baits. It is fun, but it doesn't work all the time in these ponds, especially if they're getting a whole lot of pressure. Sometimes early and late they'll eat them. The neat thing about this, with hardly any weight in it, I can throw this as soon as it hits the surface of the water. I can work it right away. I can reel fast, and I can scurry this across the top of the water. Basically, I'm getting a topwater lure. I can fish it really slowly and just feed it slack line, and it'll go to the bottom in 8-10 feet of water if I want to get it down low, or I can work it just 2 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches. I can work at any depth under the surface that I want, or on the surface. So I can check them if they're biting topwater, if they're early and late, especially when you see fish like swirling on the surface going after bait. This is perfect. You throw it into the shallows, scurry around along the top. They eat it just like a topwater. When it gets a little bit brighter and they're not quite coming to the top, that's when they just boil at a topwater. Don't eat it. This one you can work it just a little bit slower and let it fall down an inch or two below the surface. Where they won't eat a topwater, they'll eat this. If you want to see me actually working this bait, how I skitter it and make big fish to bite, check out this video. This goes into full detail of how you can get them to bite this thing. This thing is an absolute hammer. Good luck on those ponds. I'll see you out there this fall.